All right, so this is it, huh? Our deep dive into Revelation, specifically chapter 1, verses 1 through 20. You guys weren't messing around when you picked this one. I mean, talk about intense.
Like, absolutely. Vivid imagery, intense symbolism. It's where all the really iconic stuff comes from.
Yeah, no kidding. But before we get to the beasts and all that, I think it's worth taking a minute to appreciate just how smart this opening is.
You're right. It's not just diving headfirst into the crazy stuff. It's setting the stage.
It is. Like, right off the bat, verse 1, it says this book is about revealing what must soon take place. There's this sense of urgency to it. It's almost like a breaking news bulletin or something.
Exactly. And it's not meant for just anyone. It's addressed to his servants,
Mm-hmm.
meaning, followers of Jesus specifically.
Okay, I'm picking up on that. So it's targeted.
It is. And it's worth noting that John, the author, he's writing this from exile. He's on this island called Patmos, and he's sending it to 7 very specific churches in Asia.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 7 churches. I've always wondered about that. Like, why those churches specifically? Was there something about their location or their history that made them, I don't know, important?
Well, you hit on something important there. It's that every detail in Revelation is loaded with meaning. So these weren't just random churches. They represented kind of a cross-section of the early Christian community,
Yeah.
each facing unique challenges.
Oh, so it's like he's using their situations to kind of speak to all Christians
Yeah.
across time and place.
Yeah, there's definitely that element of universal application to it.
That's interesting. Okay, so we've got this urgent message. It's for Christians. It's using these specific churches as examples for everybody. Then we get to, I guess, the introduction of Jesus himself. And wow, it's not exactly your typical, Sunday school image.
Right. Right from the get-go, he's described with all this authority. He's the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, the ruler of the kings of the earth.
It's like John wants us to understand who's in charge from the very beginning.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
it gets even more intense. Verses 13 through 16. It's almost like John just goes all out with the visuals.
Oh, yeah. The imagery there. It's a lot to take in. White hair like wool, eyes like blazing fire, feet of glowing bronze. I mean, how do you even begin to picture that?
I think it's meant to evoke awe.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little fear. Put yourself in John's shoes. You're exiled on this island, and suddenly you have this vision of a being so powerful, so radiant.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So, all right, let's break down some of those symbols. The white hair, I'm guessing that represents age and wisdom, purity maybe. But those fiery eyes, like, is that a judgment thing? Like he sees right through you?
Exactly. It's that all-knowing, all-seeing aspect of Jesus as judge. And the bronze feet, well, in the ancient world, bronze was associated with strength, permanence. It's like saying this is an unyielding presence.
You don't mess with bronze feet. And then there's that line about his voice, like the sound of rushing waters. What does that even sound like? I mean, it's got to be more than just loud, right?
Absolutely. It's not just volume. It's evoking the sheer force of creation, the overwhelming power of God's voice.
Whoa, okay. And then there are those 7 stars in his hand, which I guess we later find out represent the angels of those 7 churches.
Yes, we'll get into that a bit later.
Okay, but there's one image that always kind of freaks me out. It's that sharp double-edged sword coming out of his mouth. What is that all about?
It's definitely one of the most striking images in Revelation, no doubt about it. Most scholars agree it represents the Word of God. And if you think about it, words can cut deep, can't they? They expose truth. They can even bring judgment. It's a powerful symbol of Jesus' authority.
Whoa, yeah, okay, I can see that. It's not a literal sword. It's about the power of his message. No wonder John falls down as dead after seeing all this. I think I'd be pretty freaked out too.
I think we all would be. But look at what happens next. Jesus doesn't leave him cowering in terror. He reaches out to him and says, "Don't be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever."
Huh. That's actually, I don't know, kind of reassuring after all that intensity, isn't it? There's this message of hope, of victory over death. And then he says something even more intriguing. He says, "I hold the keys of death and Hades." Okay, now what does that mean?
Well, that's where things start to get really interesting.
Keys of death and Hades. It sounds like, I don't know, like a video game or something. But I'm guessing it's like a pretty big deal theologically.
Yeah, you're right. In the ancient world, keys symbolized authority, power. So when John sees Jesus holding the keys of death and Hades, it's a powerful declaration. It's like saying Jesus has victory over death itself.
So it's not just that he came back from the dead, it's that he's actually in control of it.
That's exactly it. He's the ultimate authority, the one who holds the power over life and death, even over the realm of the dead, Hades.
Okay, I see. And that's why it's so important, right, this vision?
Yeah,
Because it sets up everything else that's going to happen in Revelation.
exactly. It lays the foundation for understanding the whole book.
Okay, so we've got this incredible image of Jesus, powerful, in control. And then we get to those messages to the 7 churches, which is, I don't know, it's almost like a shift in focus, isn't it? Going from this cosmic vision to these very specific, down-to-earth communities.
Yeah, it is. It's really a brilliant technique. John takes us from this grand vision of Jesus's power and then zooms in on the everyday lives of these early Christians. It's like he's saying, okay, you've seen the big picture, now let's see how it plays out in real life.
That's a good point. And each church gets its own personalized message, right? Like, it's almost as if Jesus is doing a spiritual checkup on them, seeing what's working, what needs fixing.
Right. It is a bit like that. He commends them for their strengths, warns them about their weaknesses, and offers guidance for the future. And remember, each of these churches represents different challenges that the early Christian community was facing.
Okay, let's start unpacking some of these messages then. The first one's to the church in Ephesus, and they're praised for working hard, persevering, rejecting false teachers. But then I'm guessing there's a but?
Oh, there's definitely a but. Jesus tells them they've abandoned their first love. It's like they're so focused on doing all the right things, following the rules, that they've lost sight of the heart of it all, which is the love for Christ.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the routines and forget the reason behind it all, right? Good reminder. What about Smyrna? That one always makes me think of those little stuffed grape leaves my grandma used to make.
I think John might have had something a little less delicious in mind. Smyrna was a church facing persecution. Serious persecution. Jesus warns them about trials to come, but encourages them to remain faithful, even to the point of death.
Wow, that's intense. Really puts things in perspective. Okay, so Ephesus needs to get their hearts right. Smyrna is facing some hard times. What about Pergamum? That sounds like a fancy cheese to me.
You and your cheese. Pergamum represents a church that's struggling with compromise. They're tolerating false teachings, doctrines that are diluting their faith.
So it's like they're trying to blend in, maybe, watering down their beliefs to fit in with the surrounding culture.
You could say that, yeah. And it's a challenge we still face today, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we engage with the world without, compromising our own values?
No easy answers there. All right, so we've got Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, and then there's Thyatira. Sounds like they're dealing with something similar, right?
Yeah, in a way. They're being influenced by a false prophetess, someone who's leading them astray. But the focus in Thyatira is on immorality, practices that go against God's standards. Jesus calls them to repent, to hold fast to the truth.
So basically it's a reminder to, I guess, stay true to those moral principles, even when they're not popular, right?
Right. It's about personal holiness, living a life that reflects our commitment to Christ, even when it's tough.
Okay, we've covered 4 churches now. Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira. Each one struggling with something different. What about the last 3?
Well, Sardis is described as a church that's dead, but everyone thinks they're alive. They're going through the motions, but their hearts aren't really in it.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Like they've become complacent, maybe even a little hypocritical.
Yeah, you could say that. Jesus tells them to wake up, to strengthen what's left of their true faith before it's too late. It's like a wake-up call.
Yeah, makes you think. All right, what about Philadelphia?
Philadelphia is a more encouraging one. They're a small church facing opposition, but Jesus commends them for their faithfulness.
So it's like, even if you're not the biggest or the loudest, staying true to what you believe in, that matters.
Exactly. God sees your efforts, even if the world doesn't always notice.
That's good to hear. Okay, so that leaves us with Laodicea, the last church on the list. And I have a feeling this one isn't going to be a walk in the park.
Well, you'd be right. They get called out for being lukewarm.
Lukewarm. What does that even mean in this context? It's like neither hot nor cold.
Exactly. They're not fully committed to Christ, but they're not opposed either. They're just there, existing.
And Jesus says he would rather they be hot or cold. Why is lukewarm so bad?
It's a half-hearted approach to faith. There's no passion, no zeal. And that's not what following Christ is supposed to look like.
So it's not enough to just say you believe. You have to live it. Really live it.
That's the key. It's a call to radical commitment.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground with these churches. It's like a crash course in early church history, all their triumphs and struggles. But you know what strikes me? It's how relevant this all still is, even today.
I know, right? These 7 churches, each with their unique issues, they represent the ongoing struggles of the church. And they give us a chance to examine our own hearts, our own communities, ask ourselves, where are we falling short? Where do we need to rekindle that first love for Christ?
That's a good question. Makes you think. Okay, so we've got this powerful vision of Jesus. We've got these messages to the churches. And then things take a turn, don't they? We get to the more apocalyptic stuff, the beasts and the plagues and the final battle.
Well, you could say that. Hold on tight, because we're heading into some pretty wild territory. But remember, even with all the strange and maybe even terrifying imagery, there's still a message of hope there.
All right, so this is it, huh? The part of Revelation everyone always talks about. Beasts, dragons, plagues, seals. It's a lot.
It definitely gets more intense, visually speaking. But you got to remember, this is apocalyptic literature. It's all about symbolism. It's not meant to be taken literally.
Okay, so it's not like a future news report or something.
Right. Think of it more like, those crazy dreams you have where you're being chased by a giant talking cheeseburger. It's not about the actual cheeseburger. It's about what it represents.
Okay, I can get behind that. So, what about that mark of the beast everyone always talks about? I always pictured, an actual tattoo or something.
Well, that's where interpretation gets a little complicated. Some folks see it as a literal mark. Others see it as a symbol of allegiance to, a power that's opposed to God. It could even be about spiritual compromise, turning away from your faith.
So it's more about, where your heart is, your loyalty, your actions.
Exactly. It's about the choices you make.
Okay. That makes sense. All right, then there's the 4 horsemen, which, honestly, every time I hear about those guys, it's just bad news. War, famine, pestilence, death. Pretty grim stuff.
Yeah, it is. And it's meant to evoke that sense of chaos and destruction, the consequences of humanity's rebellion against God. But some scholars see it as more about the forces at work in a fallen world. These things are just part of the reality we live in.
So it's less about predicting specific events and more about understanding these patterns in history.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Revelation's not a timeline. It's more like a call to faithfulness in the face of evil, a reminder that we're in this ongoing spiritual battle.
Right. Okay, so I get that it's not supposed to be a literal play-by-play of the future, but I gotta ask, how does it all end? Does good triumph over evil? Do we get a happy ending, or is it just, fire and brimstone?
Well, I don't want to spoil all the surprises.
Yeah.
But let's just say that Revelation ultimately offers a message of hope. There's judgment, tribulation, a final battle. But it all leads to the triumph of God's kingdom, a new heaven and a new earth.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. There's a promise of restoration, renewal. And that's what makes Revelation so powerful. It acknowledges the darkness, the struggles, the consequences of evil. But it also points towards the ultimate victory of good, the hope for a future where God reigns.
Wow, okay. So it's not about just surviving the apocalypse. It's about being part of something new, something better.
That's it. And that's the key takeaway for us even today, right? Revelation's not just about the future. It's about how we live now.
How we live now. So it's not about hiding in a bunker waiting for the world to end. It's about, engaging with the world, fighting for justice, living out our faith.
Exactly. It's about being, as Jesus said, salt and light, standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular. It's about living out the values of God's kingdom right here, right now.
That's a powerful challenge, but an inspiring one too. We're being called to be part of something bigger than ourselves.
And that's what makes Revelation so relevant. Even after all these centuries, it's not just about the end. It's about a new beginning, a story that invites us to be part of the solution.
Wow. This has been quite a journey. We started with this intense vision of Jesus, then unpacked those messages to the churches and, face those beasts and dragons head on.
And through it all, we discovered a message of hope, a call to action, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and darkness, God's love and justice will ultimately prevail.
So to you, our listener, we hope this deep dive into Revelation has given you a new perspective, sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, maybe even inspired you to, read it with fresh eyes.
And remember, Revelation isn't just a book to be deciphered. It's a story to be lived. It's an invitation to join the fight for good, to be a beacon of hope in a world that needs it. So keep seeking truth, keep asking questions, and keep the